Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, this week we got the show later this week to talk to you guys all about that stuff with me, and we got to talk about unfortunately some off the court stuff that's actually on the court stuff. But first, we got to do a quick NBA whip around. We're recording this on Sunday afternoon, so the games between the Pistons and the Magic and the Portland Trailblazers versus the Spurs have not taken place yet. So we do not know what's happening in those games. So unfortunately, we will not be covering those games. But we are actually recording this as the Oklahoma City Thunder is putting BTA, unfortunately, to the Suns after we just watched the Philadelphia 76ers get completely embarrassed by the Boston Celtics. And as I feel like as many of you guys know, is not the type of creator who wants to just crap on the NBA. I love the NBA. Favorite team is on this in this league. I generally enjoy watching basketball. I love playing basketball, but unfortunately, is that the NBA is ultimately looking more and more like cryptocurrency, where it is just you have to keep believing and believing that something beyond you will be there, and you just never really get the joys of what you want to get, right? You get a regular season in which everyone and their mama keep telling you that the regular season doesn't matter. You might get a couple of matchups that might be good, but then in those matchups, a player sits out because of some other reason why they have to sit out, so then they don't play. And then the NBA makes a rule to try and enforce players to play, which you think is a good thing. However, it then becomes a problem because it's a rule-ish, as Iman Shumpert said on Get Up earlier this week, where it's somewhat a rule, unless we kind of don't really want to enforce it to be a rule, and then it's not really a rule. And unfortunately, it then makes it to where we get into this nuanced conversation about who should be playing, who should not be playing, and also the fact that these guys' money is tied up into these things in terms of getting an All NBA award is being tied into you making a certain contract, and it just constantly leaves you feeling empty. But the one thing that I think every NBA fan always looks forward to is the postseason, right? Postseason is truly where magic happens. You know, you take your name from who you are, and then you make yourself into a superstar, right? In the postseason. But so far, we have had a pretty crappy postseason just to start. I mean, we've had three really good games, right? Hawks, Knicks, outstanding game throughout. And then we had Nuggets, Wolves, which is always um, the two teams that get together that just love to keep going against each other. They just love to make sparks happen every time they play. And Lakers, Raptors, Lakers, Rockets, even though Kevin Durant didn't end up playing in that game, it was still a great game throughout the entire night. But we've had so many blowouts, including the one that I'm watching, like I just talked about with Oklahoma City taking down the Phoenix Suns. I mean, we are at halftime, but this game is already over. And you're just constantly being left with feeling nothing. Now, when Osala was on this show and me and him spoke, I kind of poo-pooed a little bit this first round series, or this first round in general, just because I just didn't think there were a lot of matchups that warrant us to get excited about. Nuggets Wolves, I think, is going to still be an exciting series. I obviously have the Wolves winning this. That's not looking great right now, even though they're only down 1-0. But those two teams always seem to match up well against each other, and they end up playing a great game. So I do think that series is still going to go 6 or 7. Knicks Hawks. I watched that series, or I watched that game, and there are just too many things that I think that the Hawks do not do well to make me go back and think that it's going to be a 6-game series. I now think that series is going to be over in 4 or 5 games. It's a series that everyone and their mama tried to convince us that the Hawks were going to somehow be able to win this thing, and they looked I'm not gonna say they looked unprepared, but you clearly saw that there was levels to this, and how there was a difference between a great team with 2 great players and a good team with a lot of really good players. And then like we said, we had Lakers Rockets, and I just want to take a couple minutes again. I feel like I'm just constantly glazing LeBron, but I'm just impressed at the fact that this guy is missing two of his best teammates. He eventually had just a bunch of, cast of characters. He essentially is just playing the role he played in Cleveland 7 years ago, where it's just get on my back, boys, and I'm trying to get this over the hump. And they won. And I didn't pick the Rockets mostly because this Rockets team, now obviously I didn't know Kevin Durant was not going to play in this game, which is obviously going to make a difference if he's able to come back and play the next couple of games. But they've been bad in the clutch all year, the whole season. And the one thing about the postseason is, obviously, I just went through a whole rant of, how many blowouts we had. By and large part, there are not blowouts in the postseason, right? The games are close. The games are, within a handful of possessions. And even though the team might win by double digits, doesn't mean that the team wasn't in the game throughout the game. And the Rockets have just sucked at closing out games, close games the entire year. And if you have LeBron James and you have a decent amount of shooters around him, I'm just going to believe in that guy over a team led by Ahmed Thompson, Reed Shepherd, and Alperen Sengun. And so that series, I think, is still going to go 6, but I still think the Lakers are going to be able to get this done. And hopefully we will actually be able to set up for a second round series between multiple teams that I think have already won. That will be better than this. Yes, the first round of the playoffs are very much fluff. And again, like I said, we are very much pushing it out, but we will see if the NBA is actually going to be able to wrap this up, because this first round is definitely not the type of series that I think fans thought that it was going to be. So we're going to move slightly away from the NBA, but we will circle back to it in a bit, because the NFL draft is this week. And the beautiful thing about the NFL, and I think the reason why the NFL is always looked upon as a gold standard of sports in this country, isn't just the violence, which I do think is a large part of why we love the NFL, but it's the currency of hope, right? It's the one thing that you always love to have in society. It's the reason why people go on dates and dating apps. It's the reason why people try and chase their dreams. It's the reason why people start podcasts outside of their in their studio apartments. It's because there's hope, right? There's the ability that you think you can become something above yourself. And that's the whole thing the NFL does. And the beautiful part about that is the NFL draft, which, again, Thursday should absolutely be part of my sports national holiday. All 4 sports are playing, right? There's going to be hockey playoffs. There's going to be MLB playing. There's NBA playoffs. And the NFL draft's happening. So, boom, there we go. Always one of the days, right, for sports national holiday. But anyway, there are a lot of teams that in the draft, and you always think that this is the team, or these are the teams that are going to be able to come up and make a move and get into the postseason, if not try and win the Super Bowl. So the thing about the draft that I always think that's beautiful about it is always looking at the teams that can go from worst to first. I did a little bit of research on this, talk to you guys about which teams have the best chances to go worst first. So we're going to talk about the teams that are finished last place last year and also are projected to finish last place this season. So AFC East, Dolphins, they're plus 3,000. All these odds are presented to you by FanDuel. FanDuel did not pay me to say that, but I want to make sure I'm accurate. The Dolphins, plus 3,000. The Browns are at 1,800. The Titans, 900. Raiders, 1,800. The Giants, 550. Vikings, 550. The Saints have the best odds at plus 340, and the Cardinals have the worst odds with the Dolphins at plus 3,000. The Dolphins are looking to set up a black man up to fail, so that team we are not touching at all. But the main thing that you have to do is, I looked this up for the last 10 seasons, or the last 10 teams that were able to do this, right, to go worse than first. They've all happened since 2017. Some have happened, 2 have happened sometimes in the same season. Is you pretty much either need to have a new coach and a new quarterback. You don't necessarily need both of those things, but one or the other have to change. The only outliers that we really found in this that were very odd was 2021, the Cincinnati Bengals. That was the year they got to the Super Bowl with Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. They finished last with those same guys there. Zach Taylor was the coach in 2020, and Joe Burrow was the quarterback in 2020. However, a little bit of asterisk of that is Joe Burrow tore his ACL that season. So a little bit of a misnomer of why they were so bad and then how they ended up being in the Super Bowl the next season with Jamar Chase being the draft pick that year. The year before that was the very, very odd. I almost forgot this even happened, maybe because it was the COVID season. 2020, the Washington, I believe they were called the football team at the time, with Ron Rivera, Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, and Kyle Allen won the AFC East at a 7-9 record. I completely forgot this happened. I feel like there were so many guys who like missed games because of COVID. They were playing games on like Wednesday afternoon. No one was in the stadium. Odd time. So really just throw those 2 years out of this. The years that we basically have, going back from 2017, Doug Monroe was a coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was a new coach coming in. They still have Blake Bortles. This was the team that got to the AFC Championship game, going worst from first. That same year was the Philadelphia Eagles, who actually won the Super Bowl with the same coach and the same quarterback, even though they didn't win that Super Bowl with the quarterback because Carson Wentz tore his ACL in that season. 2019 was the same coach, same quarterback, was able to get going worse from first. That was Bill O'Brien, Deshaun Watson season. 2019, Matt Nagy took over and got him and Mitch Trubisky to win the division with the Chicago Bears. 2022, the Jags again. Doug Peterson was the new head coach, got them going from worst to first with the same quarterback. And then we had 2023, the Houston Texans were with a new coach and a rookie quarterback. DeMeco Ryans, and CJ Stroud were able to get into the postseason going worst from first. And then last season, 2 different teams were able to do it. One team getting to the Super Bowl, and Mike Vrabel, who I don't know if he's still going to get divorced from his wife, and Benny Johnson, who with Caleb Williams was able to win the NFC. I was about to say NFC Central, NFC North. So I read off all those stats. The teams that I actually think that have a good chance. I do think we're going to have a couple teams that are actually going to be in play for this. The Saints at 340 almost seem too good. Tyler Shuck, who is a very old quarterback for them. But they seem to have a pretty good year. They definitely finished the year strong. They have the best odds of all these teams here, and I think a lot of people are going to look at them as the team that's going to make that type of jump. And the biggest thing that I always like to look at is who's the best quarterback, who's the best coach in that division, and especially a division like the NFC South, rather. That changes every year. Okay, I do not know who the best coach and the best quarterback is in that division. It could be Shuck, and it could be the Saints. Like the Saints. Like I said, they finished the year strong. They were able to get Kellen Moore's system in there and be able to do what they needed to do to be able to get their 7-9. Yes, not 7-9, 7-10. Sorry, I keep forgetting that we have an extra game this season. So, they have, I think, the right mentality and the right kind of effort. It's people who think they're going to be able to do it. That's not the team I'm actually picking. I think it's actually going to be between the New York Giants and the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee is plus 900 to win their division. Again, the most wonky division that you can also find is the AFC South. They have the 4th pick in the draft. Right now, it's looking like they might take Jeremiah Love, the running back out of Notre Dame, who has been awesome. Like, I think he is clearly going to be one of, if not the best player in this draft. And the only reason he's going to go 4th is because he is a running back. And like I said, I've never actually been someone who's been staunch about do not take a running back in the top 5, in the top 10, the first round. Because, one, we have essentially just started to take receivers at anywhere. Like, pretty much the only time you will not take a receiver is now number 1. There are people who think Cardell Tate, who is, like, good, like, he's good, or he might go as a 2nd overall pick, seems insane. When Jeremiah Love just seems like he's just going to be a better player. And you can argue that, by and large part, every single running back is the best when they come out, right? Like when they come out, that is the best time to have them play because they're just going to either get worse as they get older in their career or their body's going to unfortunately start to break down. So if you're a team like the Titans or the Giants and you have a young-ish quarterback and you have a new head coach, it would make sense to draft this guy to be able to take any pressure off of your young quarterback, especially when you need to start winning that season. I would be fascinated to see where he goes. And I think if the Titans take him, I think that will be exactly the type of player that they need. And I think they're a team that should be watched out for to actually win their division. This is not a homer pick, but I'm going to go with the New York Giants simply because I think they got the best coach in the circuit that was available in John Harbaugh. I do think that they simply traded away Dexter Lawrence, so now they have 2 first-round picks, or not just 2 first-round picks, 2 top 10 picks. Even though trading Dexter Lawrence away, we'll see how well that is good for the Cincinnati Bengals, who was obviously trying to go for it with Joe Burrow this year. But they have a chance to really come away with this division simply because the division is always nuts. You have the Philadelphia Eagles, who I'm pretty sure hate their quarterback now. The Cowboys are the Cowboys. And then you just saw, obviously, these guys didn't go worse than first last year because the Washington football team with the Commanders now weren't as bad the year that they went to the NFC Championship game 2 years ago. But Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn are still going to have a lot to prove, especially to see if, Jaden Daniels can stay healthy. I mean, that was a nasty injury. And for whatever reason, Washington quarterbacks seem to sustain, not all quarterbacks get hurt, but Washington football quarterbacks seem to sustain some of the most gnarly injuries I have ever seen. I mean, I didn't see, not Vinny Testaverde. Who was it? Joe Theismann. I didn't see him break his leg, but everyone tells me that was nuts. But I did see Alex Smith break his leg, and that was awful to see. And then with Jaden Daniels with his elbow just looking completely out of place. So we'll see if those guys are able to bounce back and have kind of the season that they want to have. But to me, the Giants stick out so much as a team that you want to kind of believe in. You think Harbaugh's going to be a really good coach. Again, 2 top 10 picks. And a team that lost so many close games last season, thinking that they're actually going to be a team that if they're able to win half or most of those games, that's a team that should not only just make the playoff, but definitely have a chance to win their division. So that's a team that I think will actually be able to do it. The Vikings are an interesting kind of spot, too, with Kyler Murray. It all depends on if you believe in Kyler Murray. He essentially is playing for the minimum. He can be absolutely the favorite. Let me look up right now. Is he the favorite to comeback player of the year? I would have to think he's the favorite now. Just because he is good. And it's a very weird list to have comeback player of the year. So comeback player of the year, Kyler Murray is not on this at all. I guess you have to be hurt, to win this one. Maybe. This seems like a very odd, because right now the favorite is Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey had a great year last year. Aiden Hutchinson makes a lot of sense. Dak Prescott, that didn't make sense. But right now the early favorite is Malik Neighbors, who, makes sense. Tore his ACL, is able to come back. I believe the Giants are going to have a really good season. I think Kyler, I guess this is a weird award because I don't know if these are actually guys who were hurt or just had bad years, right? Because Burrow, I know, won this award twice, but he's been hurt twice. I would have to think Kyler Murray is like one of the best guys who would get this. Yeah, he's not even on the list. I'll look more into this, whether or not you have to actually have not played the season before. But no, technically Kyler didn't play because he was hurt at certain points during the season. So either way, the Vikings, I think, maybe not going worse with first just because their division is stacked, and it's just going to be hard to see them going from last place of winning that division. With you have the Packers, you have the Lions, and then you have the Bears, all having winning records last season. So I don't think necessarily the Vikings will be able to do it, but I can see them actually being a team that goes on and makes the playoffs. So. Last story that we are going to talk about for you guys is regarding the New York Knicks. It's not even really the New York Knicks, but they're one of their most incredulous parts of their team. So the Knicks get the win against the Atlanta Hawks, like we just mentioned before. But they're in the news again for not great reasons, and it doesn't really have to do with the basketball team. It has to do with their owner, James Dolan. This is not necessarily just a story about the Knicks, per se. It's not necessarily a story about venues at this point. It's just a story really about how much are we willing to allow our personal liberties to be taken away for something that we love, right? There's a story in The Wire that came out literally just before the NBA playoffs started, and it revolves around the security system that is there at Madison Square Garden. Now, a story came out a couple years ago in 2018 that talked about how the Garden was implementing new facial recognition to be used for essentially James Dolan's personal vendetta. There have been many stories of James Dolan kicking people out of his places just because he is a perpetuant child and can't stand any sense of criticism. So the story goes on to talk about how Dolan has made like these long-running feuds with people. He kicked out a guy who basically was selling banned Dolan jerseys. And the thing about it is, it's not just the fact you can't go to MSG anymore, right? Which are obviously Knicks games. These are, we're talking about the Rangers as well. You can't go to any of the James Dolan like industries. So for a lot of people who don't know that, James Dolan owns Radio City Music Hall, right? There was a woman who was also a part of a law firm that James Dolan essentially banned that kicked out her and her daughter because she was associated with this law firm. She herself didn't have any issues with James Dolan, but because she was associated with it, her child could not go see Name the Thing that is always played at Radio City Music Hall. And the same thing goes when you go to the Sphere, which is a new venue that was just built out in Vegas. And this is not the first time James Dolan has just been in the news for just being an asshole. He's had his long-running legal battle with Knicks legend Charles Oakley, and they still have like a court ruling that's supposed to be happening that happened in 2018, I believe, when Charles Oakley was kicked out. You have a lawsuit stemming from that's the thing I just read. 2017, where he was left and moved. You have not one, but two sexual assault lawsuits that involve James Dolan. One that was closed in 2007, and one that's still open that started in 2024. He is one of those people who you understand how petty and small and terrible some people can be to others in the world. And he is just putting out a product right now, as far as the Knicks, that's too good to pass up. And that's the reason why a lot of these stories go away, And it speaks to what I think is a growing concern, is that the dope is too good, right? The music's too good. The sports are too good. The movies are too good. It's all too good for us to really care. It's the thing that I think people have realized this now, but this has been happening years ago, is that people, well prior to the movement that we have now, as far as you can pretty much do nothing to get canceled. But the people who got canceled, unless you did something that is quote unquote illegal, you could still get around. Kanye West did, some of the most abhorrent things in the world. he's still able to sell out SoFi Arena, right? I don't have to go into the political sphere of how many different politicians have assaulted, lied, stolen, committed fraud, still get elected, get reelected. All these things keep coming through. And unfortunately is if you are talented enough and people like you enough, these things go away. And that, unfortunately, is just the system and the penalty and the toll that we have accepted to how this thing works. And I am not saying anyone should boycott the Knicks over this. I am not sitting up here and trying to get people to convince that this is the thing that people should stand on. I just want people to acknowledge that this is just the acceptance of the world that we are in. And when people want to know how these things affect us or how did we get here, a lot of this is just us being okay with the poison that we get fed all the time because we simply like it too much. What does that say about us as humans? I don't know. That's way too deep for a conversation for me to have. But it does say something. It does say something rather about who we are and how we try and, deal with the things inside of us that allow us to be the people that we are and enjoy the things that we really, really like. All right. That's all the time that we have for you guys today. Again, please like, subscribe, review, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell a friend. This is the Men Who Cry podcast. I'll catch you guys later this week.